Hello, my name is Dylan Pecky. This analysis will be done by me, and the topic I chose was monetary policy and its effect on economic growth. So first of all, what is monetary policy? So monetary policy is the action taken by a central bank to control the money supply along with interest rates. And monetary policy also plays a huge role in investment, economic activity, and aggregate demand. Another big part of monetary policy is maintaining financial stability and making sure everything is running smoothly in the economy. How is monetary policy used? So the first way is by controlling inflation. A big part of monetary policy is maintaining price stability through inflation control. By adjusting interest rates, central banks can control inflation within their preferred range. While central banks can raise interest rates to reduce spending and slow down inflation, they can also lower interest rates to encourage spending, which ultimately boosts economic activity, along with inflation when they need to. So pretty much what that means is the central banks have a range that they want to keep the inflation within. And like if it starts getting too high, then they can lower it, which once they lower it, it'll encourage consumers to go and spend more. And if they need to make it higher, then they can make it higher, which will pretty much encourage consumers to not spend as much. The next way is managing unemployment. Although it's not the main focus of monetary policy, it can be used to influence employment levels. Through lower interest rates, central banks can create conditions to job creation. On the other side, periods of high inflation can cause central banks to prioritize controlling prices rather than boosting employment, which is in the short term leads to higher unemployment. And the final way that I chose to talk about how it's used is maintaining financial stability. Central banks may intervene amidst a financial crisis through either ensuring smooth functioning of financial markets, providing liquidity to banks, or even adjusting reserve requirements. All right, so moving on, we're going to talk about monetary policy's contribution to economic growth. So economic growth. Stable economic growth is crucial to the economy as it maintains living standards and enhances societal well-being. Economic growth is supported by monetary policy by fostering investment and maintaining stable macroeconomic conditions. The next reason is price stability. Certainty and stability for both customers and business owners are delivered through price stability. Price stability also helps to promote economic welfare and prevent the elimination of real income and savings. So what price stability means is like they're trying to make you stay stable. So like I said at the end, it's looking to prevent the elimination of real income and savings. The last and final point that I chose to touch on is full employment. When the economy is either at or approaching full employment, resources are used to maximize output and productivity. Along with that, full employment also supports consumption and household incomes, which drives economic growth. So here's a historical example and how it applies to monetary policy and economic growth. So the 2008 financial crisis. Post 2008 financial crisis, central banks all over the world implemented lowering interest rates. This was done to hopefully stimulate growth through boosting business and consumer confidence and also lowering borrowing costs. It also helps support economic recovery and try to get on the right track back to recovery. So like I talked about before, if like in this example in 2008, there's a financial crisis and you would like to encourage consumers to spend more and get more money flowing through the economy. Sorry. So like it said, they implemented lowering interest rates, which means that the interest rates are going to be lower and it's going to make the consumer want to go and spend more because they have more money in their pocket. Another example is the 70s and 80s Fed cycle. So in the late 1970s and early 1980s, the Fed's tightening cycle was aiming its guns towards combating inflation. This is an example of central banks tightening their monetary policy by raising interest rates because of high inflation. In the short term, The policy led to economic slowdowns and a falling economy. However, in the end, it ultimately helped lay inflationary pressure to rest for the first time being and helped lay the foundation of sustainable growth. So now we're going to talk about trade-offs in monetary policy and its effects on economic growth. Decisions surrounding monetary policy involve trade-offs that range between short-term economic growth and long-term stability in the economy. So we're going to talk about expansionary policy, which seeks to encourage economic growth through aggregate demand. So this policy stimulates growth and through the lowering of interest rates. While that seems like a great idea, the trade-off for lowering interest rates is risk of inflation if the growth exceeds the total capacity. Next, we're going to talk about contractionary policy, which seeks to reduce the rate of monetary expansion to fight inflation. So this policy is a way to control inflation through raising interest. While it sounds not great, it honestly doesn't get better. The trade-off is it may lead to short-term unemployment because of the reduced spending. So the way that both of these tie into trade-offs is because in the expansionary policy example, the first thing we learn is the policy stimulates growth through the lowering of interest rates, which lowering of interest rates is always good. But then you see that the trade-off is that if you lower the interest rates, then the risk of inflation, if the growth exceeds the total capacity, is much higher. So the first article that I chose was a monetary policy speech by Jeffrey M. Lacker of the Federal Reserve of Richmond. So the first thing that they touched on was monetary policy stimulus in low interest environments. So challenges posed by areas with negative or close to zero interest rates and providing further stimulus to economic growth. The next thing is the role of monetary policy in growth. The direct effect of monetary policy on real economic activity. However, he also makes its role clear in maintaining low inflation. The next point we're going to touch on is inflation expectations, which is the importance of stopping inflation expectations while maintaining policy credibility to ensure effectiveness of monetary policy in controlling inflation and keeping economic growth. So the second article we're going to talk about is by CNBC, and it was written by Jeff Cox. So the first thing they touched on was interest rate policy impact. So the current economic environment was discussed in the article, and once again, like discussed in the previous article, near zero or negative interest rates were brought up. Also, the potential impact of keeping rates unchanged for an extended period. So the next thing we're going to touch up on is market and economic reactions. Although it doesn't seem like a lot, a small adjustment in the market can alter and move a lot of money, which is talked about in this article when they discuss things such as higher interest rates, taking corporate earnings into account, and profit margins and how they can affect the market. And the final thing we're going to touch up on is monetary policy effectiveness. The efficiency and turnout of monetary policy was put into question in this article, but in the end, the conclusion was drawn that factors on the supply side were playing a more major role than we actually thought. So coming to our conclusion, we're going to talk about some of the key findings and the importance of monetary policy. So key findings. Monetary policy has a crucial role in the shaping of economic growth through interest rates, inflation, and financial conditions. And if not executed properly, monetary policy can hinder economic growth through disturbing consumer behavior and distorting resource allocation. Next, the importance of monetary policy. Monetary policy plays a critical role in economic growth by influencing interest rates, inflation levels, and overall financial conditions, which in turn affects investment, consumption, and borrowing decisions. Effective monetary policy implementation is essential for maintaining price stability, supporting sustainable economic expansion, and mitigating the impact of economic downturns. So as we come to the end, these are the references I use for both the articles. And yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.